let's see. Some of the reasons for this stream are probably that I am on like a couple of cold medicines. Maybe at like, maybe right before I went to bed, or maybe at like 5 in the morning or something. I read a YouTube comment. Believe it or not, every time I get a YouTube comment, I get a notification on my phone, and I can just click the thing, and I can read that specific YouTube comment. Now, I got one of those, and it led me to my recent Soul Level 1, New Game Plus 7, Fresh Start. No Estes, run whatever, blah, blah, blah. Sell out, advertising self. But there was this comment here that just said, "Low bro." Low bro, talking about me though. I'd love to see a video of you talking about how you view the series after playing it for so long. Also how you stay so calm after a death. Really, I just want to hear you talk about how you feel about the games as a whole. And for whatever reason, that really resonated with me. It's that kind of thing, if you ever have had like a really good idea, like as you're going to bed. Thanks, Josh Parno. Have you ever had a really good idea when you're going to bed, and then in the morning you just forget about it, or you just don't do it, or you're like, I remember it, but I'm just too lazy now. It was that kind of idea, except I woke up at like 5 in the morning and couldn't go back to sleep, and I was like, well, let's just do this idea, right? Let's just do it. I couldn't go back to sleep. There was a dog in our bed. There was another dog in our room making noises, and probably just because I'm on cold medicine. A good YouTube comment? What? So Cam RN Jurena, this one's for you. Heads up, the only notifications that are on are subs and resubs. I didn't want any text-to-speech or anything else really interrupting the thoughts, the trains of thought. But thank you guys for your resubs and your subs. I don't want to. I'd like to stay focused if I can. But I'll thank you guys for now. Error 404 plays, Josh Parno, and Volts. Thank you guys for all your resubs, and Captain Ramius as well. And then Dragothic X, thanks for the fresh sub. Get him out now, because Axel94, thanks for the resub as well. Welcome back. Yeah, Dark Souls stream of consciousness, sort of. Now, this is not a premeditated thing at all, as you can imagine, for somebody who just was like, yeah, let's do a thing. But I at least want some sort of outline for what I'm going to talk about. I have some ideas, but not necessarily for every game and stuff. So I'd like to talk on similar points for each game. So let's just create an outline real quick. For each game, we'll talk about the development of the game, whether that means solid facts about what happened during development, my speculation on why things are a certain way, Miyazaki thoughts, Tanimura thoughts, whatever. Just something related to that. Maybe I won't even have points to talk about it on certain games or whatever. Another precursor is that this is in no way me trying to say a game is better than any of the other games. Try to bring anybody onto my side of what's game's good or bad or whatever. That's not my point here. All I'm doing is I'm taking thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of my experience playing these games and just talking about it, I guess. Which isn't really a thing I normally do. And this isn't going to be a very focused discussion. It's just going to be talking. So if you're looking for a super edited, engaging point-to-point thing, that's not going to be this. But I am going to talk about things that I both like and dislike, so that will be in there. Just not a thanks for subbing. So development, mechanics definitely are a thing I want to talk about. Soundtrack we can make points on, but probably nothing super super solid. Blue Soapstone, thanks for the sub. Mechanics is a big one for me personally. Lore / NPCs, I think. Presentation, sort of? That kind of falls into development, but also not necessarily. Some of these points will definitely intermingle. Enemies, bosses. That kind of falls into mechanics, but yeah, we'll put it just. Why can I not? Sure, whatever. And yeah, level design. Thank you. And I'm not going to. It's not going to be a whole lot of back and forth with chat. Just a heads up. However, if you have things that you have questions on, and I find them worthy to talk about, or I'm like, oh yeah, this blah blah blah. Oh yeah, yeah, we'll put art style. I don't think that's one word, but this music, yay. Atmosphere we'll lump into art style, I think. Lorbos. Features, I would say mechanics. We'll put mechanics / features because those aren't necessarily the same thing. Not using Notepad++. Yeah. We'll go with that, and if we need to add some later, then we'll add some later. But this also isn't going to be very pretty. It's mostly going to be me sitting here talking. I don't really have any like visual aids. Here, we'll just be like images.google, Demon Souls. Yeah, this. That's what I wanted. Demon Souls wallpaper. There you go. Perfect. That's that. Okay. Well, I don't really have any good way to start this off, but here we go. Demon Souls. I guess a good way to start off is my first experience with the Souls series in general was with Demon Souls. And I've said it before, and you know, some of you are like, yeah, I've heard that before. But my very first experience with the Soulsborne game was Demon Souls. And that was, I think, before Dark Souls was out. And I played it for a total of maybe 3 hours or something. And I made it through the tutorial, and it was fine. And I was going through Boletaria, and it was fine. And I met the Red-Eye Knight outside of Doran's little sanctuary there. The Red-Eye Knight with the spear. And I fought that guy, and I fought that guy, and I fought the shit out of that guy. And I couldn't beat him. And I was like, this is not good. I'm not enjoying this. So I put the game down and did not return for the near future anyways. And that was my experience with Demon Souls. I was like, it's not the game for me. I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking at the time. It's hard to go back that far. But yeah, I think I was just like, no, I'm not going to play that. That sucks. That sucks. And it wasn't until about 1.5 years later that some close friends got me to play Dark Souls. And were sitting there with me and like, we're going to watch you play through this. And that's your motivation. That I was like, okay, we'll try this again. I played Demon Souls. And from there I got hooked and kept going. And the Souls series is an interesting thing in that respect. That if you go in, I feel like a lot of people could play a Souls game without any outside, you know, interaction, like from friends, without any knowledge of the game outside of, I just bought this and I'm going to play it, and just hate it. Just be like, this game, this is terrible. This game is not balanced. It's not good. I mean, it looks awesome, and it seems really involved, but they just didn't do a good job of making it fun. But a lot of people I talk to are like, yeah, my friend made me play this, and I sucked, but then I got good, or gooder, and then it was cool. It's very cool. And now I'm fully immersed in this whole series of games. So really shout outs to the people who could tolerate it enough to the point of, you know, really making progress and figuring out that this game is amazing. Whether they could do that from the beginning, or it took all this stubborn trial and error, if you want to call it that. Kudos to you guys. Because if there weren't people like that, well, obviously the game wouldn't be as popular, but I certainly wouldn't be playing the game today. We're listening to Demon Souls OST, by the way, of course. Okay. Interesting preface to it. Demon Souls, of course, is the first of all the Soulsborne games, and is a Miyazaki game. And it's the first time that I know that he was able to fully take his dream and make a game out of it and direct it and this and that. I know he'd worked on, like, maybe Armored Core or something before that. A lot of these details may or may not be true, but I'll be sure to clarify what I'm not 100% sure on. How did I find out about Demon Souls? I used to live in a house with several people, and one of the persons had Demon Souls, and I don't remember if he suggested it. I think he might have suggested it. And so then I sat down and tried it one day, and I was like, no. Nope. Nah. Anyways. Miyazaki headed up Demon Souls and created a beast of a game, really. This is the basis for the series, which, if you look at it, all the Soulsborne games, like, largely, they have not changed a whole lot. I mean, even from, you know, spell systems. I mean, obviously, there are changes. But in general, things that ran Demon Souls still run Dark Souls 3. And it's really impressive that it's been able to stay mostly the same. And that kind of also goes into why I think the series kind of has been dwindling. But we'll talk about that a little more later. So Miyazaki makes this game. They release it in Japan. I don't think it really does well at all. But From Software, with my interactions with them and Bandai Namco, very much seem to be a company that's like, we care about what our customers think about our games. They're very much more like, we're going to make a game the way we want to, and if you like it, cool. If not, we don't care. We just want to make what we want to make. Which is awesome, because that's how you make the best games, is when you have developers who are passionate about the product, and they don't care about money or popularity or anything like that. And I think it really shows with the Soulsborne series in general. I have kind of a theory. Again, this isn't really the time to bring it up, but now that I'm thinking about it, I kind of have a theory that Miyazaki was done with Dark Souls I mean, this might be well known too, but I kind of think that Miyazaki was probably done with Dark Souls after 1. Like, I don't think he wanted to do Dark Souls 2 at all. And the only reason that happened was because somebody was like, this is a valuable product, let's make a second one. And so they did 2 without him. And then I feel like they... either he saw it and was... no, I don't know, man. He could have seen it and been like, I would do this differently. Or maybe somebody was like, we'll pay you a lot of money, just do the 3rd one. Because even 3, when he did another Dark Souls, he's like, yeah, this is the last one. Like, I'm not doing it after this. He seems very like, stop, I'm done with Dark Souls. Like, he went and did Bloodborne, and that's a whole different thing. I mean, same basis, but it's the same thing as moving from... It's a little closer, but it's similar from moving from Kingsfield to Demon's Souls. They're very similar games. Obviously, Kingsfield is first person and much older and stuff, but very similar, but very different too. So I kind of feel like him doing Dark Souls and then Bloodborne was kind of that sort of leap to a new thing, and he just wants to do new thing. But who knows? Anyways, let's get into the meat of the game, actually. Demon's Souls starts off, and I do want to kind of analyze, like, the opening cutscenes for each game, because I think that's important. Let me know if the music's too loud or anything, by the way. So, the opening cutscene is kind of unique because it's an intro to the entire Soulsborne series. I mean, maybe it didn't know at the time it was going to be a whole series, but thank you guys for the resubs, by the way. It gives a bit of story information, but I think ultimately it shows off what the game is about more than going, here's really engaging story stuff. Because it does talk about, like, you know, I don't remember the exact quotes in the first... It's a little loud. Sorry. This fucking song. Yeah, it talks about, like, the old gods and stuff. But then it just proceeds to show cool shit, like giant skeleton man, like, slamming sword down and guy just dodging last second, and then epic massive battlefield with phantoms being summoned in, and then dragon god and blah blah blah. And I feel like that cutscene was made very much to sell the game and be like, look at the awesome stuff in this game, it's so cool, and less of a story setup. Like, even though this is just the intro, so I guess it's kind of different than like it's the demo autoplay thing that when you have the game on, not necessarily the actually once you start the game kind of thing. But anyways, music seems fine. But it does show you Dragon God, and you're like, holy shit, I want to go fight that thing. I mean, here he is. That's him. They set him up there. But anyways, that's all I really got to say about that. Since we're listening to the music, let's talk about the soundtrack. Obviously, it's not a, like, live orchestra recorded thing. And a lot of people really love the Demon's Souls soundtrack. Maybe for nostalgia, but also maybe for its quirkiness. It's, I was talking about the lore first, so everyone who's not very familiar with it can understand the lore. So I'm not super familiar with it either. Like, I'm really not about the lore in games, and you should know that if you watch me often. Online features is what was the tipping point for you to pick up Demon's Souls. It sounded very unique. Definitely. And I remember, not too long ago, maybe a month ago or something, I looked up trailers for Demon's Souls because I was just curious. I never saw marketing for the game or anything, and it was like, it reminded me of like a 90s commercial. It was like, Join your friends, and it's like blah blah blah. Showed stuff. It was just, I don't know, it was funny. You should look up a trailer sometime. Anyways, we're talking about soundtrack. Well, really quickly, from what I know of the lore, some of this may be right, some of this may be wrong. The details are shady. There's an old god, and there's a King Alant, and he sought power. And I think he called upon this old god, which shrouded this city the game takes place in, and like spawned demons. Basically, he wanted power, and it kind of corrupted him, and then all these demons spawned. And then people came from other lands to like go see what's up, to save the city, also seek power, whatever they wanted to do. And you're a person who's come to the land to do whatever it is you want to do. And you meet these NPCs along the way. And they have their own stories and stuff. And ultimately, you slay Alant and decide whether you want to put the old god back to sleep or take the power for yourself. The choice is yours. I guess that gets us in the lore/NPC section of it. I don't really have a whole lot to say about the soundtrack anyways. Like, the soundtrack is what it is. I enjoy the soundtrack. Probably the most memorable song in this game for me is the intro cutscene. You know, bum bum, ah, that whole thing. I remember these songs, of course, now as I listen to them, but if I think about them another time when I haven't played the game in a while, it's kind of hard for me to recall the music. And that has nothing to do with... It only has to do entirely with basically my opinion of the music. Also how much I've played the game to remember the music. It's oh yeah, Astrea's theme is also fantastic. It is wonderful. That's one of my favorite songs in Soulsborne. Certainly my favorite in Demon Souls. I forgot about Astrea, thank you. Judicator theme is funny, yeah. Credit songs for all the Souls games are really good. Really good. Okay, well, let's talk about lore/NPCs. Well, specifically NPCs now I want to get into. So Demon Souls, you have the Maiden in Black, and she is your Emerald Herald of Demon Souls, and is largely what I think the Emerald Herald is based off of. Not character-wise, but mechanically, of course. You have to return to the Nexus in order to level up, and you do it through the Maiden in Black, who grants you this power in exchange for souls that you have gathered. The mechanics of that make sense to me. They wanted this central hub, and they do it. They've done it in every game except for Dark Souls now. I mean, Firelink Shrine is still a hub, but they didn't force you to return back to it for leveling or anything like that. And while it was convenient to level up at bonfires wherever you are, I do kind of think it's... Overall, I think I prefer having one centralized level up area. As long as the load screens aren't too bad. Bloodborne. Demon Souls. Basically non-PC Souls. Yeah. But yeah. As a comparison, and people have said this before, but I think Emerald Herald has a bit of funkiness with her. And people have made this point, like I said. The Maiden in Black, while you're leveling up, on the level up screen, will be like saying shit in the background. And Emerald Herald, you have to mash through her shit every single time you want to level up. Before you level up, And I think Demon Souls did that more gracefully. Again, I'm not here to just take shots here at Dark Souls 2, but it does come to mind. And, you know, and it's a memorable thing. What I remember from Demon Souls, for comparison, is Soul of the Mind, Key to Life's Ether. That whole thing, that whole line, Soul of the Lost, withdrawn from its vessel, blah, 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 all that stuff. It's very cool. You're like, oh, cool. And what I remember from Dark Souls 2 is Bearer Seek, Seek Lest. And that just doesn't make anything to me. Anyways. If you want to read my rant about Dark Souls 2, you can type exclamation point DS2 and read all that. Now, I do like to make comparisons, and I try to make comparisons in a very unbiased observation as possible, to try and fully understand the differences, and in some cases quantify, I think this is done better, and make it as little of an opinion as I can. And that's what I tried to do with Maiden in Black and Emerald Herald. And I think on that specific mechanic of them, I think even people who are all about Dark Souls 2 can agree that the Maiden in Black was done better there. Which, again, is a tiny, tiny part, and not at all me saying that Demon Souls is better than Dark Souls 2 or anything like that. That's just the sort of analysis that I would like to make when I do comparisons on a stream like this. And again, I'm just mostly talking to myself, so take that as you will. NPCs. I have done NPC storylines in Demon Souls like once? Like once or twice? Not very much. All of the Soulsborne NPCs, I think except for Dark Souls 2, with a few exceptions, are pretty damn, like, they have some pretty convoluted, not storylines, but mechanically, it can be very difficult, especially if you don't know, to get an NPC to do what you want it to do. And I credit to Dark Souls 2 for making that more straightforward. However, I find it less interesting, I guess. I don't know what the original intention was, whether it be, I feel like it's like, this is complex. You did this on a playthrough. Next playthrough, you can do this. And then next playthrough, you can do this. But sometimes it's just a pain in the ass to do all these steps and backtrack and teleport and do this. So in a way, I'm okay with Dark Souls 2 as a person who plays it a shit ton. Like, I'm okay with going, yeah, just mash talk. Okay, you'll be back in Majula, and we'll do stuff there. Like, that's probably why I have only done Demon Souls storylines like once or twice. But again, I find them more interesting that way. Raisin. The Raisin NPC is in the currently in the bark state. Talking about NPCs, like there is the I don't remember. I'm really bad with names. In like I really don't know remember a lot of Demon Souls names or anything. There's the witch. There's the witch that you rescue in 1.4, 1.3. I thought that was really cool, and they had kind of like a puzzly way to access her with the official's cap and everything. And I don't 100% know how I feel about puzzles like that. Yuria. Oh, Yuria. the bucket. No, I'm just kidding. I like it when Souls does puzzle things, but then sometimes I'm just like, let's get back to the Souls. Let's go back. That was fun, but I don't ever want to do anything like that again. But that's obviously an opinion. I'm just like, I want to fight things. I'm all about the combat and stuff. Other interesting ones. There's a Mephistopheles. I don't even remember how to get him or her to spawn. Is it a man? I don't even remember the gender of this character. But there's some weird convoluted way you kill NPCs or something, or it shows up. He shows up at a certain point and he's like, "Go kill NPCs," and then I think he tries to kill you or something. I've only done that quest line once ever, I think, and I'm pretty sure it was in the slow run. It's a female lesbian assassin waifu. Fair enough. Yeah, I just don't remember. Hi. Sure. Where are you going? You going to Starbucks? Yeah, I'll take a Sammy. Like a hammy, Sammy. Sure, I'll take a coffee. Reason. Thank you guys for the subs, resubs. Noctura, thanks for the tip. I do have everything except for sub and resub notifications disabled, just FYI. I wanna try and keep things focused. This is mostly me talking because the request, and I think what is most interesting about me talking about Soulsborne stuff is my perspective as a like 15,000 hour invested Souls player. Coffee sounds awesome. So thank you guys. I'm not trying to ignore you or anything like that, but that's the reason. All right, let's get back to it. I'm trying to think more about NPCs in particular. They're interesting. They've kind of got the Dark Souls 1 sort of thing. I don't have too much more to say about that. Let's talk level design. So level design, Demon Souls is kind of a combo of, I wouldn't say open world. The only reason that I would use the term open world is because you have a choice of where to go, but it's also linear because when you've got, it's like Mario Brothers, like, except you don't have that choice in Mario Brothers necessarily. You got World 1, and then Level 1 in World 1, Level 2 in World 1, Level 3 in World 1. 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4. That's why people call them that way. And then you've got 2, 1, World 2, Level 1, World 2, Level 2, World 2, Level 3, etc. And you've got 5 worlds like that. And you can go to, once you beat the first level, you can go to any of the worlds and start at level 1 of those worlds, and then work your way linearly to the ends of those. Some pros and cons. I think the progression, it's hard to balance when you do a game that has open world stuff, because I feel like however you start in Demon Souls, wherever you end up is going to seem a lot easier. I mean, that's not necessarily a fact. Valley of Defilement is pretty much always going to suck, just because of the area, not necessarily because the enemies are necessarily hard, but they do kind of suck. But the way I look at it is, while I've been watching Lobro play through some Souls, he mentioned this last night during Lobro Souls, that there's a point where everything starts to get easy. And that was the case in Dark Souls 1 when you get to, okay, you can go to any of the 4 Lord Souls. But what that means mechanically is, okay, these are all the same difficulty. Just take your pick and go wherever. There's no right way to go, necessarily. And as you complete them, you'll be leveling up, getting stronger, getting better this and that. And then the remaining stuff is easier. Also, you just get better at the game in general and stuff like that. So I like the option for choice. And I'm not saying that it's bad at all to do this. I'm saying it's an interesting quandary to have, I guess. Stop leveling. I mean, sure, everything's in the power of the player, but when you, in the control of the player, but you know, when you're playing an RPG, you typically want to level up and do good. So yeah, I haven't thought about a solution for that, nor am I going to give thought about it right now. I'm just spewing thoughts from my mind, like I said. So there's that. Overall, as far as individual level design, like, it's got shortcuts. I think Demon Souls is particularly brutal in some cases. Let's take, I don't know, Tower of Latria 3-2, for example. That level is massive. Oh my god, it's massive. And especially on a first playthrough, it just, with no checkpoints, it is so brutal. Like, you gotta rake your way all the way through. If it was Dark Souls 2, let's compare. If it was Dark Souls 2, there would be like 6 bonfires in 3-2, I think. 1-4 is also really long and hard. Oh wait, well, 1-4's got a big shortcut. I thought you were thinking of 5-3? 5-2? 5-2. That's the one with the old hero, right? Yes, long and hard. That level in particular comes to mind. Valley of Defilement comes to mind. It does have a big shortcut, but it's really far in there. It's basically like, once you have learned how to navigate the level, now I'll give you the shortcut back, which is kind of how you should do it, I think. But it's also nice to have little shortcuts here and there to do it in sections. So I can't really say how I feel about Demon Souls from a first playthrough perspective, since I was already engrossed in so many hours of Souls games by the time I got to it, that I more or less knew what was going on. I could do combat fairly okay, and it wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad, you know. But on a first playthrough, like, I can't even imagine. Like, that must have been utter dicks. So I feel like in terms of that, the levels have gotten better, even though some people will say more punishing is more better, but I don't know. I like challenge, but it doesn't have to be a grueling challenge for me anyways. Says the guy who does hour-and-a-half boss kills. That's different. That's different. Okay. Yeah, other than that, that's really got to say. All I've got to say about level design. That's how it is. We'll talk about other level designs and other Soulsborne games when we get to them, and yada yada. Art style. I think a lot of people. There are some people who are like, yeah, to this day, Demon Souls is my favorite art style. The interesting thing is, and what I try to do anytime I think about a feature of a game, a piece of a game, mechanics, any of it, art style, level design, I try and put myself in the developer's shoes and think about why a thing is the way it is. And I think they definitely had, you know, a vision for how they wanted Demon's Souls to feel, and there's a lot of atmosphere, in not just in specific places, but also just in how the game is rendered. And some places, interestingly enough, I feel like are darker slash, well, just darker, not only for a feel, but also for like performance save. Because again, you have to think that they're developing for PS3, and it's pretty advanced stuff going on there, and the frame rate isn't very consistent all the time. So you have to think that they're pushing the limits, and they got to find places to cut down on performance costs. So some areas I feel like that are especially dark might be for reasons like that. Valley of Defilement has a lot of like limitation to how far you can see. More so than like you know, Dark Souls 3 or something, where you can look out and see like shit all over the place. But overall, like, ignoring the performance fact, yeah, it's very dark. It's kind of blurry. It's got like a blurry feel to it, and not in a bad way either. It's, I don't know how to explain it beyond that, but it's very cool. I would say the atmosphere of the game I would put, I think I would put it third after Bloodborne and Dark Souls 1. I think it has better atmosphere than Dark Souls 3. But we'll talk about that when we get to Dark Souls 3. And again, I'm just telling you my opinion of it. I'm not trying to say this is better, this is about. And I'll keep saying that because that's the damn truth. I don't care which one you think is better or I think is better. I'm just objectively looking at everything. The animations in Demon's Souls are interesting. The character looks like they move a lot faster, and I'm not sure if they actually do move faster or if it's just the animations. The sprint is really cool. I actually really like sprinting in Demon's Souls. The controls are good. They're familiar. They're similar to Dark Souls 1. I guess we're getting into mechanics now. When it comes down to straight up combat, like I said, Demon's Souls pioneered everything for the Soulsborne series, and stuff has largely not changed too much. Anyways, it has changed, obviously, but if you compare to, say, Dark Souls 3 now, they returned to Dark Souls 1 and Demon's Souls style of backstabs and parries. I think Demon's Souls actually has only two equip, like, there's just regular roll and then fat roll, right? There's no mid roll, I think, and then there's over encumbered, but that I kind of leave that out anyways. I think that's the only yeah. So Dark Souls 1 is the only one that has fast roll, mid roll, fat roll, right? Interestingly enough, it seems they didn't like mid roll, I guess. I don't know. I'm trying to kind of think of why they might not have liked mid roll, but oh well. Talking more mechanically, Demon's Souls had no regenerative healing item besides spells. I mean, I'm not really talking about that. We have grass. We have grass, and grass does drop a lot of places, but it kind of has the Bloodborne feel. And I think it was a step back in Bloodborne to do the blood vial system where farm your blood vials. The only way you're going to get your health back as a straight up, you know, warrior and not taking into account equipment or spells or whatever, you got to find grass. Find some grass. And from the devs' perspective, they could have done that either to increase the amount of time played. They might be like, you know, okay, well, people are going to run out of grass. They're going to need to go farm it, blah, blah, blah. They'll get better at the combat while they do this. You know, they'll... And then as they play more, they'll need to farm less and less. And maybe that's also why they did it for Bloodborne. Also, it could be something to encourage players to kill things more often instead of just running past them, but also to find like rare drops or whatever that creatures might have. I don't really remember how many rare drops there are in Demon Souls. I'm sure there's a bunch, but to be fair, if you need to farm vials, you might also need the practice it gives. I mean, I don't disagree, but to practice, I would rather just play the game. I mean, you are killing... You're practicing against a specific enemy, usually. Usually you're like, all right, these guys drop grass or blood vials, so I'm going to kill the same enemy a million times. And the beauty of Souls combat is you can be really good at one enemy and then find a new enemy, and it's a completely different fight because it's not... It won't fight the same way as X enemy. And it's why I can be really good at parrying one enemy and absolute shit at parrying another guy. For example, like spear hollows or something. Like, I never parry spear hollows. So I'm probably 50% accuracy on parrying a spear hollow. But you give me like just a regular sword hollow and I'd say 90% parry accuracy or something like that. Thanks for the resubs, guys. Anyways, that's that. Demon Souls had item burden, which they did not repeat in any Souls game, which I think is good. But again, put yourself in devs' shoes and think about why they would create item burden in the first place. What I can come up with is item burden forces you to have a clear inventory, which makes it easier to manage your inventory and everything. And also, I guess, limits your loadout, if you want to call it that. You can't have a full set of brushwood and a full set of medium armor and a full set of light armor and then every single weapon that you could ever want. And maybe they did that so that, you know, you would pick one build and stick with it. But ultimately, I think it was more trouble than it didn't end up being fun. And it just got to the point where you're like, oh, I gotta go take this load screen back to the Nexus to drop off these 30 hardstone chunks that I just pulled off this bag dude or whatever. Item burden was there because RPG game were supposed to have it. I mean, King's Field didn't have item burden. And that was a From Software RPG. Here's that Asteria music. Sure, yeah, it's a thing that makes you go back to the Nexus as well. But yeah, like I said, I think it ended up being, even considering that stuff, just not fun. Not fun. And so they didn't bring it back. So, but again, Demon Souls is the first Soulsborne game, and they did take out stuff going forward, but a lot of the stuff was like, yeah, this is good. Let's keep it. Let's keep it. Item burden is not one of those things, but it's just a credit to Demon's Souls for pulling off so much stuff on first try that is largely still the same. Good stuff. Demon's Souls has kind of Dark Souls 3 health system where if you die, you immediately go to 50% health. There are human and phantom states. And then you have the Cling Ring, which gives you 75% HP, like Dark Souls 2's Binding Ring. That's pretty punishing. Again, I'm looking at stuff mostly as a first playthrough. Kind of Dark Souls 2, more like it. Yeah, but the reason that I compared it to Dark Souls 3 is Dark Souls 3 you have this health bar. If you die, you go to this health bar. It's not as severe, but that's mechanically the exact same thing that Demon's Souls is doing. But then it has the Binding Ring from Dark Souls 2 that allows you to reduce how much your HP goes down. The Cling Ring. You get a huge defense boost while a Phantom. Yeah, Dark Souls 3 has the Cling Ring built in, basically. I like the Demon's Souls system. They don't give you a whole lot of ephemeral eyes in my memory in that game. Not nearly as much as effigies or humanities, I think. Now when I play through Demon's Souls, like on a casual playthrough, well, casual playthrough. On a normal run through of the game for me, I think I end the game with like having received like 4 stones of ephemeral eyes or something like that. Granted, I don't seek them out, but even still, like, I get a lot more humanity in Dark Souls doing that. Even though humanity doesn't affect your health in Dark Souls. But effigies in Dark Souls 2, like Lobro's got 32 of them right now, and he's not even he's like halfway through the game, and he's used quite a few of them too. Again, not saying one way is worse or better, just comparing for reference. Oh, that was fast. Yeah, and also, yeah. Again, I'm not really going to look at stuff from a PvP perspective much, since I'm not much of a PvPer. Oh, yeah, World Tendency, yes. World Tendency, I am not a fan of, really. Like, it was interesting because it was mysterious and kind of... like, I don't know. They barely, if at all, explain it in the game. But essentially, anytime you... Oh my gosh. Anytime you beat a boss, your tendency would become whiter. And anytime you died as a human, your tendency would become blacker. Specifically as a human, not as a phantom. I don't remember if PvP stuff affects tendency. If you kill a PvPer, does that... Let's kill someone in PvP, does that make you whiter? I don't know. And based on your tendency, pure white, pure black, different things would spawn. For example, I believe being pure black in 2.2 spawns a demon in one of the areas that drops a colorless demon soul. It's a fight. It's a fight that otherwise you would not see in the game. But it gives this kind of really obscure way of accessing content that, especially if you don't know how to game the mechanics, you can just be like, I don't know. Like you could find that demon. Well, you could find something in pure white tendency and then like die and then it be gone and just it could resonate with the idea that you will never find that thing again because you only had one shot, and that's not true. You just need pure white tendency, but it can seem that way, which is really misleading for a first-time player. Again, it's the kind of feature that I imagine they expected multiple playthroughs to understand and figure out and all this stuff, which is cool because players do like that sort of thing. Just not very casual friendly, which, I mean, not to say that Soulsborne isn't casual friendly, but it's kind of not. It's kind of not, so that kind of fits. It kind of fits. Anyways, I'm kind of glad tendency is not a thing, and even when I go back to it, it's like I don't want to deal with this. Like, there's nothing I want from there. There's cool stuff. I probably don't even know half the stuff that you get from tendency, but I'm okay not dealing with that again. Okay. Any other large mechanics or features to deal with? Let's move to enemies/bosses because that's kind of also mechanics. The first thing I want to talk about when I get to, in terms of bosses, is Dragon God. Dragons in general in Soulsborne games I've been largely disappointed with on a whole. My favorite dragon fight is probably Calamite from Dark Souls 1, who I still have some major problems with, but it's not because he's a dragon that I have problems with him necessarily. Lots of games do dragon fights, and some of them do it kind of more realistically, like, not realistically, but like in Dragon's Dogma. Well, I'll try not to spoil things. If you haven't played Dragon's Dogma, close your ears. 3, 2, 1. In Dragon's Dogma, they do a fight where you basically are kind of like avoiding the dragon or surviving the dragon for a while, and then eventually you fight it. And I kind of like that because, again, that's more realistic. Like, it's a dragon! How the fuck are you going to fight a gigantic mythical creature that has, you know, insane power and stuff? But you gotta fight him, right? It's a video game. You would be disappointed if you didn't get to fight a dragon, so they do it. But yeah, Dragon God, back to Demon Souls, I was sorely disappointed with. They make it, I mean, it's in the opening cutscene. It's like the one thing that you can kind of strive for based on little information of the game. You see that thing, and you're like, I'm gonna fight that thing eventually. And then you get to the fight, and it's just I mean, I know the mechanics of the fight, but I still don't understand them. And maybe I don't fully understand the mechanics, but it's a stealth fight in a game that has no stealth mechanics other than line of sight checks. And it's still not very straightforward to me. Sometimes after you shoot one of the harpoons, like, sometimes he'll rear back in pain, but it's dependent on, like, whether he's seen you or not, or certain things. I don't know, it's weird. I left my porn tab on Chrome? Yeah, obviously. Why would I close that? I found some good vids. I want to watch them later. Yeah, so really when we talk bosses, that's one of the first things that comes to mind. Second of all, Man-Eaters, I think, is a huge fight in the game. One of the more difficult ones. And that is one of those fights that, one of the first times in the Soulsborne series, I think, where you go, game, you did it! You did that! And it's a good thing. It's a good thing. You're like, I've died to this stupid man-eater several times. I've rolled off the ledge of this bridge. almost killed this guy, and now there's a second one. I hate you, From Software. But it's the good kind of hate. So I really like the Man-Eater's fight. And they bring it into Dark Souls 1. And it's kind of easier, kind of harder. We'll talk about that later. Flame Lurker is a really cool fight. Again, Demon Souls is the beginning of the Soulsborne series. So you have to consider this is before before they got in the mindset, which I feel like they're in now, that we need to challenge the players more because they've been playing our games and there's only a certain amount of ways that we can make the games difficult. So we have to do this to make them difficult. Demon Souls is... a lot of the bosses are arguably easier to an experienced player anyways. But it's because we know the games, and this was before they had to make it hard. More or less, I don't know. The point of Demon Souls is not to be difficult, I think. It is supposed to be challenging, but there's a difference. And while, yes, I don't know, it's hard to solidly place my thoughts on that. But I guess I've kind of already made my points. I feel like later Souls stuff, certain things are like, we know how the player plays, they're just going to dodge all of our stuff. So we need to make it so when they dodge our stuff, instead of dodging our stuff, we follow up and we punish them for trying to dodge it in a certain way. So that they have to learn a new way to play. And that's the thing that they don't do in Demon Souls, because they're like, oh, let's just make the game. Here you go. And so in that respect, it is kind of easier mechanically. For you, Demon Souls was hardest Souls game? Again, I'm talking about from my experience, so that's all I can talk about. Hi, Tiger Crush. This is nerd shit. I like to talk about King Allant, or False King Allant specifically, because I find that to be probably the other challenging boss in the game. I think my top three in that are Man-Eaters, Flame Lurker, and King Allant. Even though now when I fight Flame Lurker, it's usually not too bad. It's just the first experience, like, holy shit, this dude. Once you get him like past half health, he's just like, and it's like, until you learn to circle around and hit him in the butt. This is the ending credit theme. Good music. Oh man, we're almost out of music. We're gonna have to restart the soundtrack because we're not even done with Demon Souls yet. But we're almost done with Demon Souls. Allant's really cool. I like the fight. I enjoy the idea of the story final boss that's not at all difficult. It's the kind of thing that makes you go, well, that's unexpected. And I wasn't really disappointed because they made a hard final boss in False King Allant. So it was cool. I enjoyed that. As far as enemies in general, we see the template from Demon Souls, I think, still in Souls games today. You got tiers of player can defeat this easily. Player will have trouble with groups of these easier enemies. Player will have trouble with this enemy alone, but he drops particularly good stuff and is rarely placed. and then there's some enemies. We don't intend for the player to fight this Unless they really, really want a challenge. Like, I guess, dragons in Boletaria, I suppose. And the harder, rare enemies, I was thinking more like Black Knights or the Red Eye Knights in Demon Souls. And then bosses, of course, which challenging, but players should face them, and it's an isolated encounter that we have full control of. I do plan on throwing this on YouTube. It was actually YouTube inspired in a way, if you weren't here for the start of it. But any specific things to touch on with enemies, bosses before we move on? Old King Doran was pretty cool. I think he was also one of those enemies where we don't expect you to kill him unless you really want a challenge. Because he's designed like you don't get an enemy vibe from Doran. He's like, I'm gonna test you. Let's do this. And then you get him to a certain point and he's like, all right, you are worthy. You are worthy. And you're like, okay, dude, you're awesome. You're a cool dude. But then if you have that strive, you'll be like, I'm still gonna kill you. And then he fucks you up. But he's cool. Tower Knight was cool. Tower Knight is a template for a boss fight that we've seen several times now. Obviously changed in ways, but you've got Iron Golem from Dark Souls 1. You've got the One Reborn from Bloodborne, which is a similar idea, right? Guys up here, boss down here. You can take out guys up here to make it easier. You can rush boss. Do whatever you want. And I'm not sure. Was there anything else? I guess he's kind of like the last giant, but not in the arena sense, not in the encounter sense. He's just a big guy who steps on you, so that's the real comparison there. I guess it's just those two main ones that were really similar. But yeah. You're saying Estrella? Estrella is cool. It's an interesting idea to have a boss that's not a boss, but also have a boss in the room. Right? Because you fight Leroy 0.5. And he's the boss. And then the boss is just the person who either kills herself or you just make quick work of her. But yeah. It's definitely an interesting boss fight. It's like a combination of a small level with a boss fight. Because there's even items in there. There's like shit you can run around and pick up. There's regular enemies. There's like the standard trolls that I think there are some that attack you. Some of them are just like, whatever, we're going to praise it all the time. And then, of course, plague babies, which is the worst. And then, of course, you got the boss, which is kind of over here on their own, isolated on their own. Pretty different kind of boss fight. I would liken it kind of to Mikolash in Bloodborne. It's kind of a similar thing. There's items strewn about. You get like a moon rune in there. There's item pickups for like a key and blood vials. And you're like, is this a boss? Is this a level? Obviously, it is a boss because there's a health bar, but there's also regular enemies, and it's kind of interesting. I don't remember any other encounters like those two off the top of my head, though there might be other ones. Okay. As far as the enemies go, Miyazaki loves having dragons in the very first stage. If you haven't noticed that trope, if you want to call it that. Demon Souls 1-1, Hellkite Drake, Undead Berg, Dark Souls, Obviously, the dragon in Lothric. They don't do it in Dark Souls 2, because it's not Miyazaki. And Bloodborne doesn't have dragons. So it's not there. But yeah. I think that about wraps it up. I didn't specifically touch on presentation, but that was kind of more like ambience and how the game is presented, in the sense that it's like, here's our game, play it if you like it, if you don't, that's cool. Compared to later games where it's like, this is hard, this is difficult, blah, 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 blah. There's a dragon in Scholar, but yes, but we'll talk about Scholar in a bit. Yeah. Anyways, I think that about wraps it up for Demon Souls, especially since the soundtrack's coming to an end in like 20 seconds. So we'll go ahead and move on to Dark Souls 1. Ugh, jeez. Which is really where the series started to pick up in popularity. Let me take a quick pee break, and I'll come back. I hope you guys are enjoying this. It's not very, like, again, it's not super focused, but we've got some points to talk about, and it's fun. It's fun to talk about this stuff. I never have a focused discussion in this sense. We might talk about tidbits here and there while I'm streaming, but this is completely devoted to that. I'll be right back.